This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stella's. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Welcome, everyone, to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is your radio show designed to focus on the trends in the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around us. So by understanding those trends, we can use them in our own workplace, our own workforce, and our own marketplace to hopefully get a little bit better at whatever it is that you do. For years, I've left Mobile, headed east towards Pensacola, and on the south side of I-10 is this extraordinarily large agricultural growing area complex. And I've looked at it and said, I wonder who's there. I wonder what that is. I wonder who owns it. I wonder who they sell all those plants to. They're all in pots, and there's extraordinary irrigation systems around it that water all these things, all of these little plants in containers. Well, it's Flowerwood Nursery. They're one of these extraordinarily success stories in our own backyard that often we don't know about. And one of the reasons is that Flowerwood sells only to distributors. They don't sell direct to public. Therefore, there's no way you and I could go to that extraordinary agricultural center, that growing place, and buy anything. But it turns out, in a wonderful twist of fate, that the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery is an old grade school buddy of mine. His name is Ellis Ollinger. And when we come back from break, I'll have Ellis on the line, and I will do my best to not get into stories of days of old and things that we did back in grade school at St. Ignatius. I'm going to keep it professional as best as I can, though it was a delight. It is a delight to reconnect with such a wonderful old friend of mine and see how well he's doing. One of the things that I've learned in kind of preparing for this conversation with Ellis is that there are patents on some of the plants that they grow. And I'll have him tell us the story of the Encore azalea, which is just a remarkable story. I didn't know that things like that, what he'll tell us, could happen, or it was what I've read about it could happen. I wanted more detail from him. But that patent, I suspect, has made somebody an affluent, a wealthy individual by creating a hybrid breed of plant. And every time one of those plants are sold, and there are plenty of them in my yard, I've purchased them and planted them. Every time one of those plants is sold, this guy over in Louisiana gets a check, gets a piece of that dollar in some form or another, piece of that purchase amount. And it's a wonderful story of innovation and what I've read, innovation and discovery and sticking with it, quite frankly. Those patents can make some folks some money. And if you're one of these people that hold a patent and have seen your affluence grow, I want to introduce you to the professionals at Sandifer Wealth Management. Good guys, good people, good team. I spend time with them on a semi-regular basis, checking in with them on how things are going on their end. And we're working together on some events that we'll talk about towards the tail end of the show. If you're one of these people with the growing affluence and are looking for help managing it or want to make sure you're making smart decisions with the money that you have, give them a call. Jamie Sandifer and Mark Salyers will take care of you. Find them on the internet, Sandifer Wealth Management, and give them a call. We'll be back after this break with my old buddy, Ellis Ollinger, CEO, Flowerwood Nursery. And they're huge, man. They're huge. And what they're doing is really remarkable. We'll be right back.
I'm Eric Cromwell. The law firm of Cromwell & Associates can help guide your decisions regarding the life you've created with estate planning tools like wills and trusts. We've planned meetings with first-generation business owners and large multi-generational family groups. With locations in Mobile and Fairhope, we can assist you and your family through every stage of life. To learn more, call 251-605-9075 or find Cromwell & Associates on Facebook.
At Spring Hill Toyota, it's just that easy. From our 3-day exchange to free car washes, the benefits of the Spring Hill Advantage make the choice easy to see. We make it easy to own. Every vehicle comes with Toyota Care, plus our no-cost maintenance plan with free tire rotations and oil changes for 4 years. Get peace of mind with free roadside assistance 24/7. And don't forget, it's easy to buy your car 100% online. Visit SpringHillToyota.com today. It's just that easy.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Now offering the purchase of the Stella Artois Chalice, a beautiful stemmed glass with the Stella logo. The purchase of each Stella Artois Chalice provides 5 years of clean water for someone in one of 13 developing countries around the world. Learn more at StellaArtois.com. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
A cool thing happened back in '64. That's when Keith Air Conditioning opened their doors.
Remy Halo has been proven to be 99% effective against COVID-19. And now you can have a Remy Halo air purification system installed with 0% financing for 18 months. When it comes to keeping your home comfortable and safe, turn to the names you trust, Keith and Carrier.
Mobile's leading name in comfort since 1964.
License number 83731.
Ellis Ollinger is the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery based in Loxley, Alabama. Folks, it's another one of these organizations here in South Alabama that is much larger than you'd ever guess. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot or any one of the independent nurseries in our area this coming weekend to supplement your yard, your plants, whatever it may be, the chances are Ellis and his company have had a hand in growing whatever it is that you buy. Their distribution extends roughly from North Carolina to Texas and everywhere in between. A huge organization of 600 to 800 employees, depending on the season. We're going to get into this as well as the trends shaping his industry. And what I'm really interested in is the patents on plants. Ellis, thank you for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
What many don't know and wouldn't know unless we told it, is that you and I were classmates at St. Ignatius Catholic School back in the day. And this is maybe the first or second time I've seen you since we both left that school many, many years ago. It's really cool to see people that I know doing so well.
It's neat. I've listened to your show for years, and you haven't changed a bit. So it's great to see you.
Yeah, you too. So let's get into what the show is about. Tell me a little bit about Flowerwood Nursery. Let's start with the history of the organization before we get into some of the things that are shaping you guys today.
Well, Flowerwood started in 1938. Mr. Greg Smith's father, Harry Smith, who was a prominent Mobile lawyer, was a camellia hobbyist, which he bred camellias as a hobby. And he and his son, pre-World War II, started selling these camellias. And then after World War II, when Mr. Smith came home from the Navy, they started in earnest and basically stopped selling the plants retail, but actually started growing the plants and realized that this climate was very, very conducive for growing nursery stock. And back then they did it in the ground, and they would have to dig everything, put it in burlap sacks, wrap it, and sell it. And they would sell the plants all over the Southeast. And then the company grew right along with the big cities of the Southeast and the baby boom.
Yeah.
So
did he give up his law practice to focus on this, on the growing part of it?
Well, Mr. Harry Smith had retired from law when he started breeding the camellias. His son, Greg, was a business major at the University of Alabama and was never a lawyer.
Yeah, and he was the one that really kind of took it to the size that it is today.
Yes.
A business major who actually got their hands dirty, literally.
Yes.
And
yes.
did a good job.
Fantastic. And he was with us until 2002, and his son, Greg, joined the business in the late 60s, early 70s, and is still the chairman and majority owner of the company.
So if I'm doing my math right, it is now on the third generation.
That is correct.
Yeah. And you're now the CEO. You're not family. Let's clarify that.
That is correct.
You were, as you told me in our phone call to kind of prep, a summer employee there at one point and came back and now have risen through the ranks.
That is correct. I will have my 30-year anniversary is in a couple of weeks. I'm not exactly sure when, but I just showed up in 1991. I had a personal relationship with the Smith family. And after a quick stint out in Houston after a job I took on campus pre-graduation from Spring Hill College as a comm arts major, I came back to Mobile, asked Greg Jr., can you put me to work? He said, come on out. I'll find something. And he's really, he's treated me like family. So it's been a great career.
It's unusual to find somebody in our generation that spent 30 years on the same job. Can you believe that?
It's hard to believe when I've really kind of calculated, but there's been a lot of plants loaded and a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
So the industry has changed tremendously in 30 years.
Well, I want to talk about that change, but first let's get some numbers to get the listeners a sense of the scope of the organization. So your distribution area is what?
Well, it's what we consider the greater Southeast. We go up the eastern seaboard to Maryland. We go down basically to southern Kentucky, or actually all of Kentucky now, southern Missouri, all the way across to Arkansas, Oklahoma, down to Texas. So if you kind of draw about a 600-mile radius around Loxley, that's where we ship to.
And you have operations, I'm looking here from your website, in 6 different locations, including Bushnell, Florida, Grand Bay, Loxley, Mobile, Ranburne, Alabama. I'm not sure where that is. And is it called Cairo,
yes,
Georgia?
Yes, that's correct, Cairo. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what happens in each of these locations? Are they all growing destinations?
Yes. The Florida location gives us a little bit better and longer growing season. Mm-hmm. And the plants down there get ready about 4 to 6 weeks sooner than they do on the Gulf Coast. So we will take early crops, move them into the Atlanta area when they want a greener crop and a more, when crops are still not quite ready to flush on this in this climate, and so with those we consider those our early season crops that we bring out of Florida. So
I remember back in my education at some point we are in a subtropical climate here in the Deep South. Is that right? Is that
that's correct.
Do the plants that you grow in, let's say Loxley, thrive in Missouri? That's a different climate.
It's close. Okay, that zone is very much on the edge. It's southern Missouri, and there are products we grow here, especially a lot of our azaleas. Some of our more hardy Encore azalea varieties will grow in Missouri, and they love them because it's seasonal color. So that is something that we, in fact, have been doing for years. Even before we were selling to Lowe's and Home Depot, we were growing plants, in fact, in that Ranburne location where plants – that is in the foothills of the Appalachian mountain chain, and it gives a little bit less humidity, a little bit cooler nights. So that climate, we use that climate to ship into a little bit further northern market.
Interesting. You sound like a vintner. You sound like you own a wine a wine orchard or something like that. Talking about the microclimates, and we use this. This temperature helps this taste. Of course, you're not eating your plants, but I've interviewed a couple of vintners and or whatever their term is, and they use similar terminology. All right, let's keep with the numbers. That's a lot. That's a big area that you oversee. How many employees does it take to get all this done?
We fluctuate between 600 and 800. Sometimes I lose track with all the related companies that we operate to have to pull this off. But I would say we probably range about 650 on average.
At any given moment, 600, 650 different people.
Yes. And in Mobile County, I would say we're probably, or Mobile and Baldwin counties, we're probably in the 450 range.
That would make you one of the larger employers in our listening area. Do you know where you exist in the range of employment sizes? I don't have any idea.
I don't either.
Yeah.
And I see sometimes new businesses move in and they tout how many new employees and they're adding to the area. And I sometimes say, well, we've been doing that for 85 years in these two counties, but it's been a great place to, my 30 years to operate the two counties and been a great place to operate businesses.
So I was on your website earlier today and pulled up the different types of plants that you offer. First, am I using the correct terminology? Plants
Yes,
versus
absolutely.
shrubs or anything like
plants.
that?
No, they're plants.
And there were 45 different pages on your website. And each page had 18 different plants on it. And my quick St. Ignatius Catholic grade school math tells me that's 810 different varieties of plants that you all grow and sell to the marketplace. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now, we'll do 3 sizes in a lot of these products. So sometimes you can cut that by 3. So, or by a third, but primarily there's about 250 of our varieties that do 80% of our business.
Really?
Yes. So when you go to a garden center, what we do, we try to put in front of the consumer what we feel is important. We use our expertise to put the plant that we feel that they're going to have the most success in their yard with in front of them.
Yeah.
So it's a call to buy. So that would they have success in their yards.
How many of plant sales, let's say I'm walking through Stokely Garden Center or walking where I know you have some product available or walking through Home Depot, how many of the purchases are impulse purchases versus people that come and say, all right, on this Saturday, I'm going to add this to my yard and come with a plan? Do you have any idea?
It's probably 2/3 of a plan. It's no different than any other home project. You lay it out in your mind. You think this is roughly what I want it to look like when I'm done. This is how much I want to spend. So they go to the garden center and they may see a variety that's not exactly the one they want, but they end up buying it because it is a acceptable substitute. Because the consistency and the time of year, it's not like the wood aisle where they're always going to have a 2x4 that's 8 feet.
Yeah.
There are different times a year that different plants are on the shelf, and it's like the fruit stand. That, because of the seasonality and Mother Nature. So, but typically they go into that store the same way they do any other home project, looking for a particular use for a plant in their yard with a budget and a project. And a lot of times when it rains them out of that time period or there's a weather event like a hurricane or a late freeze, we never get that consumer back because the next weekend they're going to a football game or they're going to graduation or they're going to a spring break trip. So when we lose a weekend in the spring, we really see it on our sales, our top line.
That's very interesting that someone will say, this is the weekend that I'm working on the yard. And if it rains all weekend, well, the yard just isn't going to look good for the next year because every other weekend is booked doing something else. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And in fact, we have a saying in this business that there's no problem in our business that 6 perfect weather weekends in Atlanta won't solve.
Really?
Yes.
Is Atlanta that big of a market?
It's our biggest market, and because it's our biggest population.
Sure.
And so now the bad news is our consumers are becoming a little bit older, have more discretionary time. So the weekends aren't as important as they used to be. Our consumers are buying plants every day of the week now, but 20 years ago, that was, the baby boomer generation that was building the houses and working in their yards. It was the weekend. And if we lost a weekend, we lost 1/4 of the month sales.
Do you see fewer buyers in generations younger than baby boomers? In other words, you and I are not baby boomers. We're younger than the boomers, and there's a generation or two younger than us. Do all the other Generation Xers' yard look like my yard?
Our generation's kind of the slacker in the garden center demographic, honestly. The baby boomers were the best. But the next generation, I guess the millennial, they're coming on strong. And this pandemic is really pushing them to become avid gardeners. And our industry research is telling us we have picked up 18 million new gardeners during this pandemic. And we're thrilled about it.
No kidding. No kidding. Let's pick that up when we come back from break. This is fantastic. Ellis Ollinger is an old friend of mine. Today, he's sitting in the studio with me as the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery based in Loxley, Alabama. We'll be right back.
I'm Paul Lewis, General Manager of Roy Lewis Construction. Many of our commercial buildings you drive by daily on both sides of the bay are the fruits of our client relationship since our beginning in the early 80s. It is our mission to bring value to our clients, from retrofits to ground-up construction and everything in between. We have more advocates than any of our competitors who have been in business twice as long. Same with repeat business, same with referrals. Find us online at roylewisconstruction.com and let's talk about your next commercial project.
Hi, I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing in downtown Mobile. We make drinkable, flavorful craft beer perfect for life on the Gulf Coast. So pick up one of our six-packs before your next adventure or stop by our tap room for a relaxing afternoon with friends. Follow us on social media for the latest beer releases and events and ask for a Braided River at your favorite bars and restaurants. Thanks for your support. We look forward to sharing our beers with you.
This is Cam Marston, and I'm with Cajun Mike of E3 Termite and Pest Control. Cajun Mike, if a homeowner thinks they have termites, do you offer inspections? What about someone buying a new home? Can you come in and take a look and see if there are termites in their new home?
Yeah, basically what we would do on a home above and beyond anyone else is we actually do a thorough inspection. But above that, we will use infrared imaging that will allow us to see problems in the wall and at times can tell us if there's anything going on.
That's fantastic, Cajun Mike. How can people find you?
They can find me at e3pest.com.
That's the letter E, the number 3, pest.com.
King Solomon wrote, "Without consultation, plans are frustrated, but with many counselors, they succeed." The law firm of Cromwell and Associates has the legal counsel that can help your business succeed with experience in LLCs, corporations, and tax. I'm Eric Cromwell. Our law firm has locations in Mobile and Fairhope. Call 251-605-9075 or search for Cromwell and Associates on Facebook. And let's discuss how we can help you.
We're back. Ellis Ollinger is the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery based in Loxley, Alabama. At any given moment, they have 650 employees spread out over 6 different locations across the Southeast. Plant sales go from Maryland to Missouri into Texas down into Florida. They're one of our backyard success stories that often we don't think about, mainly because I don't think, Ellis, if I understand this correctly, you don't sell directly to the public. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are wholesale only.
Yeah. So one of the things we were talking about, the millennial generation being an upcoming generation of gardeners, that you have a lot of hope in this generation of 80 million people coming into the garden business. What are they buying? Are you seeing different trends in this younger generation and what they're selecting at the nurseries?
Absolutely. The new gardener wants a smaller plant, a more compact plant. They want blooms. If there's no blooms, there's no room in their garden. They want a functional plant. They are big on edibles. We do not do edibles, but that is a trend.
Let's pause there. Define edibles for me.
An edible would be a blueberry plant, for example, a blueberry bush. Tomato plants, anything that they can put in their yard or their garden and feel like that they've had a hand in some sort of sustainability or something that they're going to eat that they grew themselves.
How have you changed your marketing considering this new customer?
Well, to fit what we do well and our core competency, our plant and part of our plant development services sister company is we actually have concentrated on new plants that solve a problem in the landscape, which would be a smaller plant because house trends now, we don't have the big sprawling ranch-style houses with the lines and rows of boxwoods and shrubs. Now, you look in the front of a house, typically you don't want a plant that's going to grow up and eat the eave of your house after 2 years. So they tend to be more compact. A lot of the varieties we're growing now are dwarf varieties of traditional varieties, like a Laura petalum plant. Traditionally, we called it a Chinese fringe flower, but they grew 15 feet tall. One of our successes is we have 3 different varieties now. We have a dwarf, a semi-dwarf, and a regular, but the regular only grows 6 feet tall. So that plant you won't be trimming off the eave of your house in 4 years.
Yeah.
The dwarf variety keeps the purple color, but it stays lower than your window ledge. So that's an example of a plant that has a different color than green, so you can accent your landscape with it, and it stays small.
Yeah.
So you're not out there trimming it. And so it's more of a garden look than it is a yard full of shrubs.
Some of my most bitter memories as a child are my parents on a Saturday going into the yard and trimming all the holly bushes and throwing the clippings out into the yard. And my brothers and my job was to pick up those clippings and bag them so that they could be thrown away. Well, they have little spikes on them, right? They have a little thorn on them. And I am deeply scarred, literally, from picking up tons of those things because they would grow up and cover the windows. And my parents were very particular. Hey, the plants need to be below the windows. In fact, below the window sill. And it was their job to clip and our job to bag. It sounds like you guys, through your research, your development, your experiments, have created plants where growing above the windowsill won't ever happen.
That's correct. Now, there are still some that do, and people do like screens, but those tend to be more of a property line shrub now to screen out a neighbor or to screen out, something that's not visually pleasing in your backyard. But no, we don't. We have other choices for under your window. You're exactly right. So the plants you just mentioned, that's a little bit of a dying trend.
Yeah.
The big holly bushes with the stickers.
Yeah.
A Burfoot or even a dwarf Burfoot holly. We sell less of those now than we ever have. We used to have acres and acres and acres. Now we have maybe a few acres.
Probably because people like me, who again are literally scarred from dealing with this plants, look at those things and go into relapse of the pain and torture of dealing with these things. I'm sure they're wonderful plants and there are people out there listening who love theirs. I'm not that guy. So tell me about this. I'm fascinated with the fact that you guys are looking into the future and are seeing needs for plants of a certain height and a certain color, and then are going into your laboratory with beakers and bottles and bubbling things going on and white lab coats and things like that, and creating it. How does that happen?
Well, it's not nearly that technical. Believe it or not, most of the plants that we develop actually come from hobby gardeners and breeding houses that do a little higher level, and they bring them to us and say, hey, this bush has been growing in my yard for years. Look how it's different than the other ones around it. It's related to it, but it's dwarf, or it blooms like this. It's a slightly different color. It's typically a sport off an existing variety.
A sport?
Yes, and that's what we call it. So we'll see something, hey, have you noticed this one out on the nursery? Or somebody says, I noticed this in my yard. And they bring it to us. Mm-hmm. And we trial it for years to make sure that it stays stable. We like the attributes. And then we say, okay, well, can it be grown in a commercial setting so we can grow hundreds of thousands? And then if it meets the criteria of what we feel is important, which is it's stable, it solves a problem in the landscape, we have a story to tell about it, we can produce it, and it grows well in the consumer's yard, and it solves a problem for the consumer, then we'll market it. We create demand for it through direct consumer marketing, whether it's advertising online, obviously, is the new trend, but we running ads in magazines, and we tell the consumer why this would work better in their yard than what they have, and we sell it.
Before we get into your relationship with Southern Living magazine, I want you to tell the story of the Encore azalea that you and I talked about, which is a very similar story, I think, to what you just described.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, we have had a hobby breeder in Forest Hill, Louisiana. He just, in his backyard, he crossbred different varieties of basically azaleas and camellias of rhododendrons, and came up with azaleas that bloomed in the summer and the fall, and the spring. And he worked on it for years, and eventually his wife kind of walked out and said, look, I'm tired of all these plants in our backyard. You need to do something with them. So in the early 90s, he brought them to Flowerwood, and Greg Smith Jr. looked at it and said, well, he wanted Greg to pay him for the collection. And Greg said, well, I don't know if they're going to be worth anything, but we'll trial them. We'll see. There were 1,300 varieties. And he said, let us trial them. We'll pick out the 13 best varieties, or however many we felt like we could commercially make viable. And we'll split the patent fee with you. We'll patent it if it's something different and patentable, and we'll split the fee. And so we started patenting the Encore varieties in the mid to late 90s, and started selling them in the late 90s. And now we sell almost 4 million plants a year.
Unbelievable. And does this guy who created these things from, what did you say, Lake Forest or Lakewood, Louisiana?
He's from Forest Hill, Louisiana.
Forest Hill, I'm sorry. Is he still involved in any way?
Actually, he's from Independence, Louisiana. His name is Buddy Lee, and he's still very involved.
Is he? What does he do?
Well, so Buddy continues to breed new varieties of Encore and other plants for us in his backyard, and I don't think his wife complains anymore. And Buddy is a wonderful spokesman for the varieties that he creates and the Encore. He has a full yearly calendar of speaking to garden clubs, to breeders, any plant experts, any plant nuts, hobbyists, you name it. He is in high demand to speak to those groups.
Has the Encore azalea made him a wealthy man?
Yes.
Yes. Many times over, I'm assuming?
If he's frugal, yes.
Yeah. And I assume it's done. I mean, I'm looking at a catalog that you've brought in here of the Encore azalea. I assume it's done Flowerwood Nursery fairly well, too.
Yes. It has taken us to a new age of, plants were, pretty standard, but to basically, we had to have something a little bit different, new, and interesting. And branding is a trend in our industry that basically allows the grower to create new products that are better for the consumer and to communicate that through their brand, which is no different than any other consumable product we have in the market, which is, hey, this is why this plant is better. It's cost a little bit more, but look, it's an azalea that doesn't just bloom once a year and then has fuzzy leaves and caterpillars. It blooms 3 times a year, and it's a pretty spectacular bloomer in the fall.
So these are not things that used to go direct to consumer, a specific species of plant or a subspecies of plant. And it reminds me a little bit of the pharmaceutical industry, who's saying, here's what our drug does to address your problem, different than the drug that you're already taking. It's getting the consumer to ask specifically for a product at the retailer, just like a pharmaceutical is getting a ailing person to ask for a specific medicine from their doctor, whereas historically they wouldn't have done that. The consumer now is driving this through the branding and the marketing, which leads me to Southern Living. Talk to me about that relationship.
So after we had the Encore brand well underway, John Floyd, who was the editor-in-chief at Southern Living magazine, who had previously been their garden editor, so he knew a lot about plants, actually called us. He contacted us and said, hey, I know you guys. I actually did an internship there in the 1960s. And I love what you've done with Encore. He said, I'm looking for a growing partner to create a plant brand with the Southern Living name. And we are considered experts on plants in the Southeast. And we would like to partner with the grower to create this brand of better plants that tell a story of why they are better and communicate that to our consumer base. Mm-hmm. And so we went up there to Birmingham. We met with him, and that was in 2008. And we created the brand with Southern Living as our partners, and they've been wonderful partners. And their name resonates very well with the consumers, the gardeners, and it's been a success. And back to the plants we put in that brand have to be unique. They have to solve a problem in the landscape. We don't just put the Southern Living name on a plant that's in the market. Typically, if it's in our brand, it's exclusive to our brand. And the only way you can get that plant is to go to the store and buy it in the Southern Living pot with the Southern Living tag and all of the product knowledge that goes with that on our tag, on our website, you name it. And we hope that they are superior plants. That's the goal.
When we come back from break, I want to talk about, you mentioned pots, and I've heard stories about shortages of pots during the pandemic. And when we come back from break, I want to talk to you about lessons learned during the pandemic. Did people spend a lot of time on their garden? Did they spend less time? Are there plants? What was the lessons learned? Ellis Ollinger is my guest today. He is a historic friend. He's not an old friend. He's a historic friend of mine from grade school. Today, he sits as the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery based in Loxley. We'll be right back.
Roy Lewis Construction, we're in the business of adding value. Whether it's working with you to meet your unique business needs or making investments in our community in lasting ways, providing unparalleled value and quality in every commercial construction project. When planning your next commercial project, reach out to Roy Lewis Construction. We'll pair you with a designer that best suits your project needs and work with that designer to balance the best architectural outcome with the best budget outcome. Find us online at roylewisconstruction.com, building legacies one relationship at a time.
At Spring Hill Toyota, it's just that easy. From our 3-day exchange to free car washes, the benefits of the Spring Hill Advantage make the choice easy to see. We make it easy to own. Every vehicle comes with Toyota Care, plus our no-cost maintenance plan with free tire rotations and oil changes for 4 years. Get peace of mind with free roadside assistance 24/7. And don't forget, it's easy to buy your car 100% online. Visit SpringHillToyota.com today. It's just that easy.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please pull forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, in Mobile at 666-1616.
I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing. We want beer that goes along no matter where the adventure takes us and that doesn't make us choose between great beer and drinkability. We're drawn to the Delta and united by beer because to us, the best way to celebrate the Delta is to slow down and savor the moments and the beer together. Come visit our tap room in downtown Mobile and ask for us at your favorite bar or restaurant. Visit online at braidedriverbrewing.com.
Hey, this is Cam. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're really enjoying the podcast. Do me a favor and search for Cam Marston on your social media outlets and like us or follow us or whatever is the right thing to do. Also, if you know others who'd benefit from the podcast, please forward it on to them and encourage them to listen. If you're so inclined, we'd love your rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Those ratings matter. Finally, don't be a stranger. Email me with your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, your show ideas, whatever. Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you very much for listening. Now, back to the show. Ellis Ollinger is with me today in the studio, the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery based in Loxley, Alabama. We're going to talk about some of the trends, Ellis, that the pandemic has revealed for you as the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery. We'll begin with the story that I heard from a colleague of yours in the business about the pots that they had a hard time getting their hands on as a result of the pandemic. Can you get into that a little bit?
Well, the pandemic has created strong demand for our product because as people stayed home, they looked around, and besides other bathroom and kitchen and you name it, plants have been in huge demand as people garden. So it has caught our supply chain a little by surprise, and I think that's so as we reorder to fill our nurseries back up. The demand is strong, and so it's when you have double-digit growth, the pot the container business, as we like to call it, has lagged behind a little bit, but it's simply as supply and demand. I think the 2-year pandemic demand has just caught them by surprise.
And what we're talking about here is I go to any one of the stores and I pick up a plant and it's in a black plastic container, I guess is the term. That's what we're talking about here, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And you'll see, as we talked about in the last segment, the branding, you'll see, you've got different color containers as well, which adds another layer of complexity to the container production in that you have certain colors, so they have to add pigments, and then they also have to print. So, for example, the Encore Azalea in the purple pot, it will have Encore printed on it, or Southern Living has the brown color, the earth tone brown with the Southern Living printed on it. So that adds another layer of complexity. So The container business, production of containers, has become a little more complex over the last 10 years. So it's this increased demand has caught them off guard a little.
And where do they make these containers?
Well, there's about 3 to 4 primary container companies in the country. And so they make them, in Florida, they make them in Ohio, they make them in the Carolinas, they make them in California, and they make them in Texas.
Yeah. In this studio, I've talked to a surprising number of people whose businesses have been impacted based on manufacturing out of Texas that was impacted due to the freeze last February, which shut so many places down due to the freeze, due to freezing pipes, and the pipes then began leaking. I'm curious if this is another thing that was impacted by that February freeze of 2021 that has caused so many industries. I learned the other day stuffing for a couch, foam for the couch that this couple is waiting on is not available due to the Texas freeze that impacted their manufacturing facility. It's amazing, these dominoes that continue to fall from that freeze out there. But let's not talk about freeze. I want to talk about labor. That is a trend in our marketplace right now of people not being able to find enough people. Now, when you have 650 people in your payroll, you'd think, well, they've got to have plenty. But I suspect there are times of the year where that's not enough, where you're trying to get your stuff into the stores across the nation, I suspect in the early spring. Talk to me about how you find labor.
Well, to say we are seasonal would be an understatement.
Yeah.
We do 65 to 70% of our business between February 15th and Mother's Day, the end of May. So we have to bulk up 20+% on our labor at that time. And we try to carry as much as we can of the expertise labor through the year, which we really don't even need some of the time, but we have to keep them because otherwise we would not have nearly enough in spring. But the challenge of finding labor at that time of year is very, very, very difficult, and especially in today's climate.
Yes.
We are a very good employee. We offer retirement. We offer health benefits, Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have 401ks, and we have a very, very steady workload. So it's a great place to work, but it seems to not be resonating with some of the, speaking of trends, some of the workers now tend to like more of a gig economy. They are gig jobs. They don't necessarily like the steady 40 to 50 and 60 hours in the spring that, a lot of the former generations used to appreciate, a steady 40 plus hours a week with nights and weekends off. And so that doesn't seem to be a selling point like it used to. So, and the fact that, South Alabama's economy is hot and it's hard to find employees. It's just supply and demand.
Yeah. So where are you finding them?
Well, we use a guest labor service, which H-2A, it's a federal program where basically you have to show that you have a need because you cannot find domestic employees. And the goal of the H-2A program is you can bring in guest workers, farm workers, if you show you have a need that cannot be met domestically. So, we have to run advertisements for months and months prior to bringing in the guest workers. And then once your guest workers are here, if somebody comes and applies and they meet the same requirements as you set for the guest worker, you have to hire them.
Oh, really?
Yes. And we depend on that. In fact, this past year, we didn't have anybody come in and apply, and we needed an extra 20 to 30 employees. So it's been tough.
How many guest workers do you bring in a typical year?
Company-wide, we bring anywhere from, we're at about 150 to 200.
You have to work closely with the Department of Labor to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And I thought it was interesting that you have to advertise for months on end before you can advertise for labor before you can go to them and say, we simply can't fill these jobs. Is that accurate?
That is correct. You place a work order with the Department of Labor that says, here's who I need, here's the skill set they need to have, which is usually minimal, and here is when I need them, and here's the job offer that we have for them.
Yeah.
And we have some that will come in and apply, and of course we're thrilled to hire the domestics. In fact, if we could have all domestics, I wouldn't have to worry about housing 150 people and getting them to the grocery store every week. and getting them the health care they need is not easy. So,
that's all on you.
Yes, absolutely.
So where do they come from? What is their nation of origin generally?
Typically Mexico or Central America.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't even know that whole world existed. Yeah. And are there others in Baldwin County that are doing the same that you know of?
Yeah, Mobile and Baldwin counties. It's a very well used program in both counties. Yes, in the agricultural industry.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's something that's been going for 50 plus years.
So the show talks about trends. One of the trends is labor. Everybody seems to be struggling with the same thing. What are the trends on the horizon for you? I know that I've been reading about the cannabis industries. Alabama is one of the later states to adopt this type of thing. Is that something you guys are looking into in any way? Am I going to see millennial yards with cannabis plants growing all over the place?
I don't think it's going to go that far, but we are monitoring it. And Alabama did pass a medical marijuana law. It's a very restrictive law to get medicine to patients that doctors feel like could benefit from the medical use of cannabis.
Yeah.
So, but it'll be a very controlled program that will be limited, but you won't see it in growing in people's yards. No.
I'm not going to see cannabis plants in Home Depot.
No, you won't do that. In the nursery industry, our industry will have a part in the production of that.
Yeah,
and that's why we obviously are monitoring that opportunity. But it's going to be a very small, limited program that the state will. I don't even think they're taking. I don't think it's going to be available till 2023.
Really? Is there a heavy hand from the state? If you want to say, hey, I want to contribute to the medical marijuana industry using the expertise of this nursery, is the state have a heavy regulatory hand in that process, or do they look at you and say, yeah, go on, my man, have a good time with it?
Well, the way the law is written, they've put together a commission which is meeting monthly to put together the laws basically based on the law that was passed. They're putting together the regulations based on the law that was passed this past session in May. So the commission is currently working on that, and it will be highly restrictive, highly regulated. I think right now they're only looking at putting out 6 to a dozen license to actually grow it and process it and get it to a dispensary.
What else is going on out there as you look onto the horizon? What am I as a homeowner, as a shopper, going to see change now that I've got a kind of an eye for your world? Is there a new color going out? My kids, this came up on my Facebook thing this morning. A couple of years ago, I used to grow orchids a great deal. My kids bought me a black orchid. It bloomed black, which I think is their reflection on me a little bit. But are you seeing strange new colors come out? Are you seeing anything like that?
Well, gardeners love any color but green because it helps them with their palette in their yard. So whether it's purple, that's been a trend for 10 years, the purple plants. Anything that's yellow, they love yellow plants. We have a variety, Sunshine Ligustrum, that's been a huge success because it's an easy growing plant, grows in sun and shade and provides a stark yellow contrast to greens and reds. But one of the trends we're seeing is a lot of mail order plants. Our mail order during the pandemic and even leading up to the pandemic, and not that this is post-pandemic, but it's not nearly as fervent now as it was last year, is the people ordering plants online. And we do a lot of fulfillment online for our own website, which and we do a lot of fulfillment for some of our customers. So we are putting a lot of plants in boxes and shipping them out.
I never would have guessed that.
So we have a site, plantsbymail.com, that we fulfill for, and we fulfill for some of our other bigger customers online. Plantsbymail.com. Yep.
And does that happen out of Loxley, or does it happen in one of your different locations?
No, it's in Loxley. In fact, we have a giant processing shed with 20 to 40 people daily putting plants in boxes.
Really?
Yep.
Ellis Ollinger.
And they ship well. Plants do well.
Is the CEO of Flowerwood Nursery, Loxley, Alabama. He's a friend of mine from back in the day, and I'm thrilled to see your success, Ellis, and it's a great story that you're a part of over there. Thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
It has been fun. We'll be back after this break with final comments. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. This is Cam Marston. The Keith family has provided service to my heating and cooling system since my family and I moved into our home 12 years ago. And today, Keith Air Conditioning offers 0% financing for up to 60 months on new installations, making a new heating or cooling system for your home even easier to come by. Give them a call or find them online and let them come work their magic. Keith and Carrier. Turn to the experts.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stella's. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
This is Cam Marston with Cajun Mike of E3 Termite and Pest Control. Cajun Mike, houses on pilings can have termites eat their way up inside the piling and enter the house. The homeowner never knows about it, but your company offers protection. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Cam. Basically, what we have designed is a program, and what we do is we will actually drill to the center of the piling and put a product in the center that will stop the termites from coming up into the home.
Stucco exteriors as well?
Correct.
How can people find you, Cajun Mike?
They can find me at e3pest.com.
That's the letter E, the number 3, pest.com.
When you make the right decision, it feels good, like picking the perfect accent rug or choosing a good night's sleep over an all-night crime show binge. It feels really good to make the right insurance decision, too. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I'm right here in Mobile to help you select the right protection at the right price. I'll make sure you understand your State Farm coverages so you'll know what to expect if the unexpected happens. With me as your State Farm agent, it's easy to make the right choice. You can come by, call, or click AllisonHorner.com. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
This is Jay Stubbs with Concourse Financial, and when I'm not working on an insurance plan with a financial advisor, I'm listening to What's Working with Cam Marston. Now back to the show.
Special thanks to Ellis Ollinger, great old friend from St. Ignatius Catholic grade school back in the day. He and I were classmates, and it's wonderful to see somebody like that again after so long doing so well. Good on you, Ellis. Keep going, my friend. I'm happy for your success. I really am, and it was wonderful to reconnect with you. Some of the things that Ellis said reminded me of previous guests. For example, and the same challenges that previous guests have. One would be the importance of weather in sales. Ellis talked about having clear, good weather weekends and their plant sales spike. Similar to Chris Fuchs, who Bud Bush Distributing talked about the importance of good weather over holiday weekends in the summer and how their sales are hugely influenced by the weather on those days. Another thing Ellis said is they create these plants and they set them aside to grow for 2 years. This was after the mics were off. Set them aside to grow for 2 or 3 years. Kieran Elliott with Macallan does something similar. They make the scotch, they put it into the barrels, they set the barrels aside for anywhere between 12 and 15 and 18 years before they can sell it. So these themes that keep coming up are really interesting to me, which leads me to something else. I've lost count now, but I know we're bearing down on 200 episodes of What's Working with Cam Marston, and we're organizing the 10 best ideas from the first 200 episodes. One of which, this chapter is already written, these businesses that are in business to serve people, and the business is simply a shell within which they operate. A handful of our guests have said that, and we draw it out in the book a little bit to make it more clear. I'm not sure when this book will be available. We're doing it chapter by chapter and when we have the time, but we are going to give away chapters from time to time to let you see what the themes are. So it's the 10 best ideas from the first 200 episodes. Something else I want you to be aware of is November the 4th. November the 4th, we're returning. What's Working with Cam Marston is returning to doing events. We've put them aside, obviously, for the past good while. November the 4th, 4 p.m., not sure of the destination. 4:30, the content will start. We'll give you all this detail. We'll have a succession planning coach talking about how he coaches people and things you need to know. We'll have a financial services company talking about the financial aspects of succession planning. I will talk about the emotional aspects of succession planning, getting yourself mentally ready to step out of the role that has likely defined you for so long. And those that do it well, those that do it poorly. And speaking of those that do it poorly, if I pull the right strings, I might be able to get a very recently retired bank CEO to come talk about the mistakes he made in his own succession plan. It's a very compelling story. John Thompson is the show's producer. Find him at ION, EYEON Digital, ION Digital. You're listening to What's Working. Have a good week, everybody.